Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Sheldon-Feld with the International Grief Institute, along with Glenn Lord, and this is Moments of Hope. Tonight is Memorial Day, and we have a really special guest tonight. She is a woman who has done remarkable things in her lifetime. She is an Air Force major, retired, served in Iraq. She is a former White House staffer, and she is a surviving spouse of Brigadier General Tom Carroll. So welcome to the show, Bonnie Carroll.
Great. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you for joining us. I know that you're very, very busy this weekend in Arlington and Washington, D.C. with your organization, HAPs. So we really appreciate the time that you're taking to meet with us. So I want to explain to viewers what HAPs is. When Bonnie lost her husband in 1992, 2 years later, she formed TAPS, which stands for Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. And it's a military service organization that provides assistance and support for those who've lost a military loved one. And because of Bonnie's work, you earned the 2015 recipient of, you are the 2015 recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And that is just amazing. So, with that being said, take us back to 1992. Your husband's plane went down. What happened?
Well, it was a military air crash. There were 8 soldiers on board, and it was one of those instances that we see. It was a crawler item on CNN that an Army aircraft was down, 8 soldiers killed. 2 of them were generals, which are very high-ranking officers, and that included my husband. And we hear about the military knock on the door.
Mm.
In my case, the officer came to my office at work, and the initial notification was that the plane was missing. So then as the day wore on, it was several other levels of notification, and finally confirmation that all on board, when they found the aircraft, were in fact deceased. So it is very different in the military. There are all sorts of protocols, but there's also a public fascination or a public honor for all those who die while serving in the armed forces, and that really extends to any circumstance of death or any relationship with a family member.
But I think that there's a special connection for all of us Americans when it happens, because we're aware that those who serve in the military are protecting our freedom. They are serving our country. I mean, that is the most honorable profession of all. And so we all take it to heart when one of them becomes a fallen hero. So when it happened to you, when you got that knock on your office door in 1992, what kind of support did you have back then?
It's an interesting thing. I had wonderful, supportive colleagues who tried to be there for me. I had friends who came and helped in amazing ways. But as time went on, really found that I was lacking the community that understood what this journey is all about. And it wasn't until I got back in touch with the other widows who also lost their husbands in that crash that I found that incredible magic that peers offer. To be able to just share openly, to take up that armor and remove the mask and speak honestly about hopes and fears and some of the very raw things that we were confronting. So it was out of that connection that I really found there was a need for that national organization to bring everybody together who was grieving a military loss. I tried going to other groups that I was familiar with through my work and through my own service as a reservist. I'm very familiar with a group called Concerns of Police Survivors. So I thought, well, it's a grief group. I'll just go there, and that will be great. But it was interesting that they had their own language, and perpetrators and all sorts of just different words. And I was actually on the board of a group called Victims for Justice for homicide surviving family members. And gosh, again, it was a whole different vocabulary, a whole different secondary and complicating factors. So as I kind of bounced around trying to find my tribe, as it were, my people, I found that for the military, it had never existed in this country. Just stunning.
So what support did the military offer you at the time? Anything?
Well, it's a wonderful thing. The military does a brilliant job in administering benefits, the financial benefits, the insurance, the expense of the burial. They do things called dependency and indemnity compensation and the survivor benefit, and that financial piece of it. And then they also do a beautiful job of rendering final honors, that ceremonial conclusion to a life that included selfless service to America. And part of that is also within the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is the provision of a final resting place in one of our national cemeteries. Mm. All of that is done beautifully by the military on behalf of the government. But really, once that part is over, the ongoing emotional support is best done by peers, not by soldiers. It's not what they're trained to do, and not really what they shouldn't become grief peers. As we know, grief isn't a mental illness. It isn't a physical injury. It's the price we pay for love.
Right.
That was kind of an epiphany, just that the concept that we only grieve because we love.
That's right.
Because some people may not be familiar with HAPs. And if I understand correctly, HAPs is all military loss, no matter whether it occurs in combat or not. And is that correct? And can you maybe talk of the extent of who is it that HAPs serves?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So TAPS was founded with a very simple concept of caring for and providing resources to all those grieving the death of a military loved one. And we've actually expanded that network to include those other agencies of the government that are overseas in combat areas that do have a natural connection with our community. And frankly, we get calls every day from folks who stumble across our number or don't read, and if we can't connect them to their tribe, to the organization that would best fit them in their community, or due to the relationship or circumstance of their loss, then we'll do our best to help them in any way that we can. So it is a wonderful collaborative effort. And, I love working with Compassionate Friends. We are part of ADEC, the Association of Death Education and Counseling. So it really is this wonderful community of all of us coming together to honor our loved ones and provide solace to those who are grieving.
Right. And it's also for family members who may not have died in combat, but died due to, after combat when they may be fighting other wounds that weren't as visible in that respect too, correct?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. We really do not focus at all on the moment, the manner, the geography of the death, but instead we focus on the years of the life. It is about the fact that this person lived, not the fact that they're not defined by the manner or the moment of their death. And we have, the categories of death that the military tracks include homicide, suicide, hostile action, accident, illness, and even within that, we track that and break it down further so that we can then connect peers in very specific ways to increase the level of connection immediately.
Wonderful.
Well, you've done a remarkable job. To date, you have served over 75,000 families. That's amazing and incredible. But what do you think is the biggest challenge facing those families who have lost a military loved one?
One of the challenges that we're facing now actually is seeing an increase in the number of cancer deaths and deaths by suicide.
Ah,
And it is a very, whose came home and succumbed to that inner battle and died by suicide, or were exposed to toxins that later led to their cancers, often don't feel connected to the same community as the families who lost loved ones in hostile action. And I think a lot of that is societal.
I,
You know, we welcome our fallen heroes back with the dignified transfers of Dover and the parades through town and the very elegant military burials. But when it's a death that was as a result of, say, a toxic exposure overseas, and maybe the cancer lingered for a long time, that death may not have that same level of patriotism and heroism, yet that loved one's life was no less patriotic or heroic. So at TAPS, we honor everyone equally, and we really level the playing field. Everything that we do is absolutely equal.
beautiful. And I want to share with our viewers that you're cutting out every so often. And so I want the viewers to know that you are actually still over there in Washington, D.C. You've still got a couple more events to do tonight, and you're in the hotel. And we all know that Wi-Fi service in a hotel is not always stellar. So, so thanks for hanging in there with us. You know, it's been, what, 26 years since you lost your husband. How has your own grief changed in those 26 years?
Oh, I love that question. You know, it really did come in shifts over time. And one of those shifts really was to remembering with joy and pride first rather than pain. And now when I think of Tom, it's just incredibly happy, and I feel so grateful that he was in my life, and I'm so proud that the TAPS is in a way his legacy.
Right, right. Very true. So, how about you? How have you changed? Because grief changes all of us in many ways for the better. And I like to always ask our guests, how have you changed since losing your husband?
Oh gosh, you know, it's the funny thing. At the time my husband was killed, I was a military reservist, but my civilian job was working as a victim witness coordinator in a district attorney's office. And I would work with family members who had lost loved ones to homicide. I was on a critical incident stress debriefing team in the Guard. I was on the board of Victims for Justice, as I.
We're waiting for that Wi-Fi to connect back in. Hang in there with us, viewers. I know she'll come back in.
for those of you who don't know, please reach out to TAPS. There really are. If your loved one was involved with the military, and whether, like as Bonnie said, whether they died in action or whether they died at a time after they came back, they still died a hero, and they still deserve that help, support, and honestly, the honor that TAPS is able to give them.
Yeah, and they're not just your hero, they're everyone's hero, truly. And so if for some reason we can't get Bonnie back in, TAPS, you can reach them. Oh, there she is. Are you there, Bonnie?
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. No worries. We just lost Bonnie again. She'll come back in. But if you would like to, there she is. Hold on a second. She's coming in. There you are.
I am so sorry. I tell you
That's okay. No worries.
So,
So how have you changed yourself?
Well, I really thought before I lost Tom, in the work that I was doing, both professionally and in my volunteer capacity with other organizations, I thought that I was a pretty empathetic person. But wow, when it happens to you and it's your loss, it is very different.
Your heart expands more than you ever think possible. And suddenly your passion has no bounds. It's that is actually one of the silver linings of grief and loss. And I think that if people who haven't had a loss themselves, if only they knew that, they wouldn't be so afraid of it. So that is a beautiful thing. So if you could go back in time and give your former self words of advice, what would you say today?
Oh God! Now this is a great question. I just want to clarify: is this before the loss or after the loss?
At the time of the loss.
Oh, actually, one of the wisest things that somebody said to me, which I wish probably had been said a little sooner, she said, "Well, knowing how much this would hurt and the incredible pain that you're feeling." Would you rather never have had Tom in your life? Would you rather never have known him to avoid it, the good and the bad? And oh my gosh, that was such a wake-up call. And I said, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have traded a moment. I wouldn't have changed a thing. I had no regrets. I just wanted more.
Yeah. Well said.
And then she said, did he enrich your life? Oh my, it was just such a shocking question. I said, my gosh, did he enrich my life so much? And I just went on and on and on about all the things that I had learned from him and the way he had unconditionally loved me and shown me such passion and leadership and so much. And she finally had to stop me and she looked at me and she said, all right then, all right. She said, well, what are you going to do with all those riches?
Oh, wow.
And that was a big shift.
He passed that legacy on to you to carry forward, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. What was that? Was one of the things that because of your position and because of your husband's position and where you chose to go with it, what you chose to do with those riches, your grief was a much more public journey than maybe some other people's, because of the fact that you were, out there. You were putting together an organization to help others, and you were doing so because of your own grief journey. How did you find being able to, find time to both grieve personally and also be in that public light with your grief at the same time?
Oh yeah, and this hotel internet, it just was cutting in and out.
In brief, I was asking how it was to grieve publicly and at the same time have a private grief journey.
Wow, and that is something we talk about so much with our military families. And, a military loss, particularly a high-profile one, I mean, you've seen grieving family members on television hours after.
I think we lost Bonnie again. But, she brought up a really important point, and we see that outside of the military as well, where a family is facing a catastrophe and the news people, the journalism, they're right in there with those cameras and microphones asking for some kind of statement from these families that are in shock. And, that is something I would like to change. I think that that's not a good time to be interviewing the family because they're in shock. And what do you say? What do you say? So did we get you back, Bonnie?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. So I know. Go ahead.
It's actually an interesting thing that it kind of works a little bit in the reverse, in the families. Then we all feel that the loss of our loved one should be headline news. I think we all feel that way. It's that wonderful Alden poem, cancel all the appointments, silence all the dogs, that they're gone. And so for some families, when the media stops, that actually becomes a frustration. Do you understand?
Yep, that makes sense.
Because in the beginning, like you say, you want the whole world to pay attention. You want the death of your loved one to be the most important thing that happened on the planet. And then when you're in the middle of all of the attention there, you're you're feeling that, even though you to your point, Linda, maybe you're not being treated with love and kindness. You maybe are a little bit more of a being put on show for the media. But either way, you do get that feeling, like you say, that you are everything, and then they go away, and then what happens? Now all of a sudden, where does that leave you? Yeah,
it's an interesting thing. We all want to talk. We want to talk about them. We want to share their life. They are
very true. Very true.
Years ago, there was a major military air crash where a lot of service members were killed, and then TWA 800 happened with a big commercial. It was a big commercial airline crash, and the families were so. I mean, they were almost upset that they had been bumped, so to speak, and so it kind of goes both ways. We want to tell our stories, and we want the world to know that our world is forever changed.
Yeah, well said, well said. So as we wrap this up, because I know you have another interview to get to, what words of advice would you give military families today who are facing loss of a loved one? Well, there she comes.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That. It's okay. Did you hear the question?
Yes. Okay. And in the military, we honor our loved ones in such a dignified way, and they become part of an American legacy of service and sacrifice that is just beautiful. And so for our military families to cherish that and embrace that. But for everyone else, for all who are grieving, just knowing that love lives on. This physical body is so temporary, but that love and that spirit and that soul continue on forever.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Bonnie. And I want military families to know that your loved one is truly a hero. And heroes are never forgotten. So thank you for all that you do as a military family, for serving our country. And thank you, Bonnie, for joining us tonight. I know you're a very busy lady over there, and this is your biggest weekend of the year. We're very grateful to have you join us and share your story with our viewers. So you have a wonderful night and safe travels home to you after everything ends. All right. Well, thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.